Well, good morning, everybody. Let's work through some of the highlights of the forecast here over the next few weeks and then try to take a longer look out there as to when this pattern might kind of go back to this active pattern we've been in right now, because we do know it's going to be changing here in the near term. The map I've been talking over looks at the last 14 days of total accumulated precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. And since the beginning of this new year, we've had multiple systems roll through the midsection of the country, putting in some places down 300 to 400% of normal precipitation. East Coast has been extremely wet as well. It's the areas that have been missed that have been most concerning to me. So parts of Montana, the Northern Plains, the Canadian Prairie, and then much of the south and southwest part of the United States, starting from Texas all the way over to California, has also missed out a lot on this pattern. Now, lately we've added some snow into parts of the Mid-South, places picking up 5 to 8 inches through here with ice farther to the south. And this system is going to roll into parts of New England today, making a very challenging snowfall forecast into New England, especially as you approach kind of the I-95 corridor, New Jersey, New York, getting up into Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, this area. But in the west, we've added more snow, but there's been a corridor, a very distinct corridor over which that snow has been coming in recently. It's been really targeting this particular area. We want to know if that's going to continue as we press forward. Some bigger picture things I just want to keep you up to speed on. This is the newest update on the Mississippi River. This morning, nearly 14 feet above low stage. So just in the span of a few short days, went from below low stage now rising over 16 feet since I reported last Friday. So pretty impressive to see that water getting into the river system. But it's still quite cold, but we're expecting quite a bit of change in the temperature pattern over the coming week. In fact, by early next week, we expect all of this cold air to be kind of blasted out as the jet stream is going to line itself out and start to give us better flow in both the North Atlantic and North Pacific to kind of eliminate the risk of widespread cold across the country. Now, part of that is becoming more evident in the shift that's occurring in something called the North Atlantic Oscillation. For the time leading up to these big snowstorms we've had, the NAO has been dropping off. And this is just a metric by which we judge the behavior of the North Atlantic jet stream pattern. Now, you hear me talk about it other ways. I always talk about if you can get a big ridge in Greenland or a big ridge in Alaska. Well, that ridge in Greenland represents a setup that gives you cold air that's out there in place to be used across the eastern half of the country for big winter storm systems. Well, we're not in the negative mode anymore of the North Atlantic Oscillation. We're going over into its positive mode, meaning the jet stream is going to just line out across the North Atlantic. It's going to be doing that also across parts of the North Pacific as well, right in through here. So as the jet stream configuration changes, it's really going to change our temperature pattern. It's going to change the way that moisture flows across North America. Now, we're still in the midst, or still kind of dealing with the depths of the cold air being displaced back at the end of December, beginning of January, out of Alaska and out of Greenland. And that's why the lower 48 still has several states that are dealing with the Arctic air today, tomorrow, and into this weekend. We have another shot of it coming through. But the transition is starting to take place. It's about to change. Now, we have winter storm warnings that still line up here along the Blue Ridge and the Appalachian Mountains, getting up toward Washington, D.C. as well. Winter weather advisories stretch here. Very cold air that's diving into the south. And then in the northwest, we're dealing with an ice storm threat here and more snow coming into the parts of the Pacific Northwest. Right now, the setup is this. There's a big low that's just cranking out here in the open Pacific, and it's going to be sending more mild air over the top of Arctic air that's seen here in the infrared temperatures that continues to push into the northwest. And the risk there is going to be for an ice storm. This is the probability of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of ice over the next 3 days. That's very high throughout parts of the Willamette Valley following the Columbia River, and even going up here through the I-5 corridor toward parts of like the Seattle area. So we need to watch out for the risk of this ice. Broader picture view, though, of the snow, it's going to kind of follow just one simple track right in through here. So one system exiting today. Then we're going to watch 2 high pressure cells kind of squeeze the flow in through here, adding some more snow. Lake effect will continue, but our biggest snows are going to be in parts of the Pacific Northwest with this upcoming pattern. So I want to show it to you real quickly in the high-res models. So one low is exiting through middle of the day today into this evening. See it leaving New England there. Again, very challenging forecast right into this area. Snow on the backside. I'll show you how much in a few moments. Rain pushing through parts of the southeast and the mid-Atlantic. And that system's gone by this evening. So this is 5 o'clock tonight Central Time. It's out. Still lake effect snow going on behind it. And now we're going to watch the northwest. Because later this afternoon or this evening, see it right in through here, there's that risk of ice we just mentioned. Now the snow that pulls in behind this starts to tap into that very cold air. So it's mild along the coast, very cold here, but the sandwiching right there in the Willamette Valley is going to be the bigger issue. Now when I say mild, that's relative. It's January, so that's a January mild, if you will. That's why we got rain along the coast. But as we play this forward, I love seeing the snow coming into Idaho and Montana and spreading into maybe even parts of Wyoming here to tomorrow on Wednesday. And we'll take a look at just how much in a few moments. After that, we're just going to keep an eye on a boundary right in through here on which we could get some additional snowfall through the middle of this week. But overall, the pattern kind of goes into a bit of a reset mode until we get into early next week when it's in full change. So how much snow are we talking about? Well, I'm just going to use the European model as a benchmark right now and tell you that this particular spot right in through here will be the most challenging to forecast for the total amount of snow. There is one difference between this system and the last, and that is it is not just drawing in abundant amounts of warm, air off of the ocean. So we could get some decent snows in through here, but you've got chances for 3 to 5 inches of snow, broad area, maybe a little bit heavier snow right here on this part of the Appalachian Mountains. Coming off the Great Lakes, of course, more snow than that. And then following it, we have a band right in through here of 1 to 2 inches that'll come in later this week. On the West Coast, let's flip over there and look at the next 5 days. We can get that to go. There we go. Cascades picking up 30 to 40 inches. Northern Rockies about a foot in some places, but I love this right here. This stripe of snow coming into one of our driest states, Montana. Okay, temperature change is going to be critical in the forecast. We have 2 waves of cold coming in the next 5 days. So that's what your next 5 days looks like, stretching all the way from western Canada through the prairie all the way down to the southeast United States. But getting out to day 5 through 10, the North Atlantic lines out, the North Pacific lines out, cold air goes to Alaska, the Canadian archipelago, and Greenland, which means we don't have that cold air in North America. So what that does to the precipitation type is critical to watch. So GFS versus the European, we've already seen the first system. We've seen the second system come into parts of the Northwest. There's the snow. It spreads on Wednesday, Thursday. Look at that. Wednesday, Thursday, right there. And then the lighter snow that kind of sneaks in through this corridor. See it right in through there. And we get out here toward Friday and into Saturday. Here's the next Arctic blast on that high pressure cell. It then goes into the southeast. That's critical because when it moves early next week over the southeast toward the mid-Atlantic, it just opens up the Gulf to transport of heat and moisture. And that's why starting next, let's call it the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, we open up the atmosphere to a pretty sizable system that's got a lot of moisture in it, and it's also got a lot of warmth in it. Now, meanwhile, in this whole 10-day time period, the West just kind of keeps getting hit. Notice that. This is next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We bring in quite a bit of moisture into the western United States overall. So just kind of keeping the broader context of this pattern, I'm curious as to watching the transition of these temperatures and its impact on our current snowpack. While we'll be building snowpack in the west with this, the snow that's right here that's in parts of the Mid-South and Midwest, this is all going to change pretty dramatically, I think, as we go forward. And the thinking here is that with the changes that are happening with the temperatures next week, we're going to start to pull in quite a bit of warmth. So what's going on? Well, the jet's trying to retract by the time we get out there to the 23rd, 24th. The jet stream's going to dive into a deeper trough here, but look at that southwest flow. See this ridging here? And that's going to bring in the mild air, it's going to bring in the moisture, and it's going to push the rain-snow line pretty far to the north. So when you look out there at week 2 and we see wetter and all 3 forecast models, just remember it's also going to be mild, which means some of that heavy snow that's sitting in this section of the country is going to begin to melt. The good news about it is some of that's going to be getting into the soil, helping correct some longer-term drought issues in those areas. What I don't like about it is the newest forecast for week 2 went a bit drier in the west, and also you can see here maybe a bit clearer in the 8 to 14-day forecast from the CPC, the drier to the north. Temperature-wise, going to get our frost all the way down into parts of central Florida. Talked about this a lot yesterday. And here comes your 2 waves of colder air. Here's the first one already in place today and tomorrow. Then we get a little bit of a more mild air in places on Thursday, but watch by Friday, drops back in again with high temperatures struggling to get out of the single digits. That spreads south and east on Saturday. Getting into Sunday and Monday, that's when the transition is going to happen. Because the day 5 through 10 looks like this in the ensembles, both the GFS and the European, and here's day 10 through 15. That's the mild setup. Now, the polar vortex isn't helping at all with this because right now it's helping. It's kind of lined up with some of the colder air, but it is forecast to strengthen. So it's here now, and a stronger polar vortex tends to hold tightly on the cold air across the Arctic. All right, so that strengthening is a signal for more mild air as well. I think the biggest thing to watch is the MJO transition. And if you want a bit more of an in-depth discussion of this, go watch my other video, the in-depth one, as we watch the MJO come out of its warmer phases for the next 15 to 20 days. And then maybe by the time we get into February, back into its colder phases over on this side. But as it stands, most of the long-range models look something like this from mid-January to mid-February. Will we actually be able to bring in this much moisture into California in this pattern? There are signals for that, but we need to watch carefully because we don't want to get to the end of this winter season and not see good moisture returning to the west and the southwest. So that'll be a top priority for me in forecasting overall. From here, I just want to point out that there is some agreement when you look also at the European ensemble. And then our last thing is going to be South America. Let me take you back here. We expected this week to be drier north and wetter into the south and wetter into parts of Uruguay and Argentina. But the transition into week 2, just as we've been discussing for a while now, brings quite a bit of moisture back north when we should be ramping up harvest and the planting of the planting of corn, safrinha corn. So that right there kind of continues the narrative we've had. We got to watch how long this lasts into the month of February to see if it slows the progress of both harvest and planting moving forward. That'll be a big story in South America. Let's keep an eye on it. Appreciate your time. We'll talk again in the morning. Thanks.